Welcome, welcome, welcome to Innovators Anonymous. My name is Colin Waitsman. I'm going to be your guys' guide today. As you can see, we've added a visual element. First time we have this, so it's definitely exciting. Another reason this episode is really special is that I have one of my close friends and coworkers with me, Lexi Williams. We work together at Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, both specializing in new business sales. Lexi, thanks for coming, and really excited to have you on.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Excited to do it.
Yeah, so I know right now there's a lot of things in the air. 2020 has been a crazy year to say the least.
You could say that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to see, how have you been doing with everything that's transpired since the beginning of March and to today, in the middle of June?
Yeah. I think it's been ups and downs. The way that I typically answer that question when someone says it is, I have good hours and I have bad hours, and I have good half hours and I have bad half hours. And I think that's, that holds true for most people, right? Like there's a pandemic outside, and then, oh yeah, we're trying to solve the world of systemic racism. And there was killer bees at one point, and then there were
murder hornets.
Yeah, and some killer rats in the subway in New York. So I think that if everyone could just stop playing with their voodoo dolls, it might be okay. But no, I think it's been all right. Obviously, like I said, it's been hard to be Black in America for longer than this pandemic has been. But
Yeah.
We've never had a conversation quite like this, at least in my lifetime. So really looking forward to that. And, as far as the pandemic goes, I feel like things are opening up. So I'm optimistic.
Same. I'm optimistic on the front that we have stores, businesses, and things appear to be opening up. So on that end, things are looking really good. But
No
then
question.
we also have these issues that are making things you question. Things seem to be at its all-time worst, or if not all-time worst, obviously. Things are the veil's been pulled back, and we can see
Sure.
these things. One issue, or the main topics we wanted to go over are some of the racism that's going on throughout America. I know that's a topic that you've been really passionate about. You shared your stories to a lot of different people throughout our company, as well as on your social media. I wanted to get kind of your perspective. What have you seen on a personal side for you growing up as being an African American, especially being mixed, because that's something that I've had. It's a slightly different experience than just being full Black or full white. So how has that been for you growing up?
Yeah. So it's been super interesting because in America, I always say in America, you don't have the value of being mixed. So you're either too white or too Black, and you're never white enough and you're never Black enough.
Yeah.
And that, as I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir on that one, but you walk this super weird, tightrope-y line growing up, right? So super privileged lifestyle I led, continue to leave. I love the bougie things in life. And, I went to prep school, went to a PWI, a predominantly white institution, and in the Northeast. And, I was in a sorority, and, I was not an AKA. I wasn't cool enough for that. I went and did all of these things that are that sort of stereotypical, white American, college student thing. And it's super weird when you grow up that way. And for some reason, people still at the end of the day, you're still just a Black person to so many people.
Yeah.
And I was but I don't get it. I love Lily Pulitzer and Vineyard Vines, right? I didn't understand. And then I think once, and I got called Oreo, I can't tell you how many times, which I thought was so funny then. And then now I look back and I'm it's deeply disrespectful and racist. And I just allowed it to happen regularly. And I remember I was telling my parents this just a couple days ago. about how I always had a watch. Like I always wear a watch. And when I was a kid at summer camp, I like made my mom make sure I had like a new watch for summer camp. Like it was like a thing. And we would go to Target like for camp, and I'd be like, Mom, I need my new Timex. And I was like, I revealed to my mom, I was like, when I went to summer camp, like I would tan because we're out on docks and we're horseback riding. You're outside in the sun all day long. But you would see the tan line for how light I would get in the winter. And I wanted the kids, mostly white kids, to see that I was lighter in the winter, so that like I was like, no, like I'm not full black.
Wow.
And I can just like, now I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I was so uncomfortable with my blackness because I was around whiteness all the time, straightening my hair for every dance, right? Like now I'm like, man, this is the curls. Like, like this is what we're working with. But I didn't mean to like flip my hair aggressively.
No, you're good.
Right. But it's like little things like that I think sort of add up, that now in my like late 20s, I'm like, honestly, like fuck off. This is who I am. Like, I don't care if it's too white, not white enough, too black, not black enough. Like, I didn't ask to be mixed, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. I know how to season my food, and I'm, like I got a little bit of an ass. Like it's kind of great. So, and obviously those are very shallow things I'm kind of kidding about, but I think that they hold true all the time, and it's tough being mixed and people asking you, oh, is that your real mom? Like, yeah.
Yeah, that was the
my fake one.
that was the biggest issue for me, I guess, growing up being half black, half white. The biggest, I guess, challenge was as a child, looking back at it, because kids can be mean.
Like, brutal. They're brutal.
Yeah, kids are brutal, and when you're a kid, you don't kind of realize what's being said to you. Like times have been called an Oreo. Or the amount of times, I'm sure you probably got it whenever you're playing hide and seek or the lights go out. The second the lights go out, where's Colin?
We're not gonna be able to Lexi.
Yeah,
it's hilarious.
Like, all right, you're that's so funny. Things like that, and I remember.
Or smile so I can see you. What?
Yeah, and at the time, it's crazy because you don't really notice, you don't think of it as, oh, this is really bad. And I think that main issue was because like you and I, we both kind of grew up in an area where that's not an issue you see all the time, whether it be because it's in a PWI or you're in a privileged area. So that's why I think it took a little longer, or at least for myself, I don't know about you, to kind of realize, oh, wait, this is not okay to be told like on a daily basis.
I think that like also my parents sort of shielded me from it a little bit, or at least did the best that they could, right? Like I still had those like stereotypical talks with my dad. My dad is the black parent. But I think that they just thought that if I was the best athlete or the smartest kid or, or whatever, that I could sort of outrun that. And then I went to college, and then right after college, I was like, oh God, no, like I can't, so I think that that's probably fair. And I think it's a privilege that you and I have had, that we were able to not recognize it until a lot later in our lives, because so many people don't have that privilege. And so I think it's super important for us to recognize that.
Exactly. That's something that I try to recognize when we have these calls, these conferences, these discussions with other African Americans, whether it be in my friend group, our community, our company, is that I make sure that I recognize like, hey, the experience that I had was very different than the experience that they had. So I need to listen and understand. And it's changed my worldview and my perspective over the years, because it's been from like oh, this is how all African Americans see the world, because this was my experience, to oh no, like the world is extremely different, and I was pretty lucky to be in the position that I was for so long.
Well, I think also a thing that you're sort of touching on there is like colorism is like very much a thing, right? Like having fair skin, whether you're half black, half white, or just a full black person with fairer skin, is a distinct privilege in and of itself, right? So like, it wouldn't matter. That's my thing. Like, I'm like, it doesn't matter that I'm half of anything. Like, right? Like, I can't control colorism. The only thing I can do is like recognize my distinct privilege in that.
Yeah.
And like, I hate when people are like, well, you're half white. And I'm like, yes, but people don't see me that way, right? Like
Yeah.
the white community, just because I'm like half, isn't like, all right, come on over here just because you're half. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't happen, right? Like, it's colorism. It's not my parents. It's, like that is so, it's so deeply ignorant and so difficult, I think, to grapple with, because as a kid, you're not like, oh, that's colorism and at its best. You're just like, oh no, everybody tells me I talk white.
Yeah. It's
Um,
all based because perception's reality. So it doesn't matter the fact that, this is my mother, this is my father, and this is who I am going to be. It's how do I look and how am I perceived by other people? And so, yeah, just like that, like, especially colorism, within the black community, where there's people that are hateful towards other, it's like, oh, he's like, oh, the light skin attitude, or the like, oh,
yeah,
he's
great,
dark.
right? Like
Yeah.
he's literally monetized that.
Yeah, so it's difficult to see, and it's something that I'm really not a fan of. It's like I'm hoping that sometime in the future we can all come together as like a community, be like, hey, we're all in this together. Like, let's not hate on each other for who we are, but just be a great people all together all at once.
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that you're seeing, I know you mentioned being in sports and how you're always like, hey, we wanted to be the best athlete or whatever it is.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
currently you're working in sports and
Oh, yeah.
being on primarily for a New Jersey Devils hockey team up here in Northern Jersey. How have you found the transition? I'm not sure if you watched hockey beforehand, but how do you feel being, Black woman in sports, especially primarily focused on hockey?
I mean, you notice it every day. You have no choice. I step off the elevator every day and I'm like, whoop, there it is.
Mm.
I am Black and I am a woman. There it is. Like I'm affronted with my identity literally every single day. So that's interesting. And so I think one of the things to touch on there, right, is like the idea that when people say like representation matters, it's like there's like, I dare anyone to go into a place, like any white person to go into a place where they know they don't look like anyone and they are the opposite gender of majority of the people in that space, and do that every single day and see if that doesn't wear on you or if you don't notice it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And people are like, oh, it doesn't matter, like we're all, and it's like, no, like I notice every single day that I am not like you. And it doesn't matter how many things we have in common. At the end of the day, I think we all know what we know,
Mm-hmm.
And so that is really interesting. Another thing is that, I'm 27, whereas a lot of people that we work with, specifically on our like sales floor, are 23 to, I'd say 25, maybe turning 26. And so I don't know what it is that happens after 25 that like your brain starts to do this thing. But I think, sometimes I do notice that. So you add that third layer on top of it and it's just like, all right, I need to take several deep breaths here today.
Yeah.
But as far as it goes, just like working in hockey, right? Like when I walk around the concourse, when we have 15,000 people in our arena, I'm like, there's a lot of white people here today and every other game day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes you notice it in slight ways, right? So like when there's me and my white colleague standing there, like a white man inherently comes up and asks the white man. And I'm like, okay. Or I notice it a lot when I'm standing with, we have obviously like these entry-level employees called sales associates, and they're the bomb and they're the greatest workforce ever. But they're entry level and my position is not. And someone will see me standing with a sales associate and they will inherently ask the sales associate because this person's like white. And I'm like, hey, there's my cat. Sorry.
No, you're good.
And it's just kind of like, all right, like I work in this building every day. This person doesn't. You don't know that. You just saw that they were white and a man, so you ask them for directions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's little stuff like that that sort of starts to wear on you. I would say that like sort of overarchingly, it's not this like deeply terrible thing, but it's something like I am consciously aware of every single day. And something that I'm deeply dedicated to getting other people that look like me to work where I work, because I think it is a great place to work.
Yeah.
But I think that it would be better if there were more people that looked like me, you know?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things, and it applies to everything, not just where we're working or what we're doing, but is having a sense of diversity of what the world is looking like. Whether it's because it doesn't matter if the group that you're working with or the people you're selling to or whatever is of a certain identity. Like if you're selling to primarily African Americans or white people or whatever, like I still think that it's important to have diversity, not just of thought, but of character, and people that look different, different shapes and sizes, because that's what the world is like. Not every you're not gonna be able to just, if you get a random group of 1,000 people in the world, just get all of one race. You need to get you have a diversity of backgrounds and where people came from.
Yeah, I mean, I'll worry about diversity of thought and background and all of that stuff when there are more people that look like me. But for now, I'm deeply committed to actual diverse representation in people's skin color. Like that is like priority number one for me. Like I think diversity of thought is like a complete cop out by corporate America. Like I think it's like, well, we have lots of people with different backgrounds. And I'm like, sure, you grew up in Connecticut and this person grew up in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
I don't care. Like that means nothing to me. Genuinely means nothing. I think that is a problem for 10, 15 years down the road for us to make sure that that's like what we're committed to. But today we need to be committed to getting more Black people into corporate America. That is a true commitment. And I think that companies need to start saying that, right? Mm-hmm. Like not like, oh, we're committed to getting like diversity. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I think that one of the best things to hit the internet in the past couple of weeks was where everyone was like exposing these companies, like, show us your board. And I was like, exactly. Like,
yeah,
you can't scream diversity of thought and then be like, yeah, we're diverse in thought, we're diverse in background, and then everyone's white.
Like yeah, and I think it doesn't just start with companies and the corporations. I think it goes down to the college level as well, where
everywhere. Yep.
Yeah, and college and high school and whatever it is, because it's these applications for whether it's through the SATs, College Board, whatever. Like you're saying we're stressing diversity, but then then we probably wouldn't have PWIs or whatever it is if there was some like diversity was actually as important as you say it is.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, so that's one thing that I think is huge, that it doesn't just start with the corporations, but it's rather everything else. And I mean, looking at colleges, we're starting to see it change, especially with athletes.
For sure.
Like I don't know if you saw Mikey Williams just recently, like one of the top basketball. So for those that don't know,
at 15.
15, one of the top basketball recruits in the country, class of 2023. He announced like last week that he's going to be strongly considering having an HBCUs in several of his final schooling decisions. So that's going to be huge, because the last major, especially basketball player to come out of an HBCU is in the 50s and 60s, and many of them don't even know their names. I had to look some up. So I think something like that can be huge for the Black community, being able to grow, especially those schools.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it's important to recognize. So I think it was Mikey's mom played volleyball or softball at an HBCU, right? Yeah. So talk about just following your mom's footsteps. I'm like, what kid doesn't love that idea of following in your parent footsteps, but on top of the fact that you have this deep, rich heritage, that's awesome. So it wouldn't matter where his mom went to school. I'm sick. I love that you're paying homage to your mom in that way. Yeah. I think that's awesome. Start there with that kid. Good job. The second thing that I will say is that how is a 15-year-old seeing this stuff better than some full-grown adults that have control in these systems, right? So the thing that I like, how I feel about, first of all, I'll say this. I think every Black kid in America that's like a top recruit should go to an HBCU, at least for a year. And here's why I say that. So I worked in college athletics for 4 years, as you know.
Yeah.
And the hard part about these HBCUs is that they don't get the same contracts, and they don't have the same TV rights, and they don't have all of those things that a college can use to get money to make their schools and institutions better, because they don't have these like top players, right? Like Zion Williamson was worth like $5 million
At least.
for going
Yeah.
to Duke, right? This kid's 18 years old, going to Duke and literally getting Duke $5 million. And right, like you're probably questioning like, okay, well, what is that $5 million coming from? That's like I said, like TV rights, like stuff like that, right? And he's not seeing any of that, first of all. So you're not changing any family tree when a kid goes to college, which is tough. But second, a kid goes to college that's playing a sport like a Zion Williamson. I'm not saying that like going to college is a bad thing. What I'm saying is that if he is worth $5 million to an institution and sees none of that, that's ridiculous right there. So let's just start with, that's a whole different conversation, but that's one thing, right? Mm-hmm. But the second thing is that with someone like Zion, if he had gone to an HBCU, he could have, now, you know, HBCUs are playing in their own sort of championship tournaments and things like that. So it is a little bit different in terms of what that looks like actually like on a basketball court, because you're not playing, you know, Duke. Or if you are, you're like the cupcake team for them, unfortunately, right? So it's a little bit different. That said, why should you allow these large, predominantly white and all white male run institutions to profit off of a Black man, when there are literal schools that are run by people that look just like you, that if someone's gonna have to profit off of you, like it might as well be someone that looks like you, and to help a completely disenfranchised group, which is Black people in America. And you know, I think that Mikey really just like exposed that that's like frankly like this really great idea, but I don't think it matters. I don't want to say it doesn't matter, but I don't think it helps as much like this year. I think that's going to matter 5, 10, 15 years down the line, when these really great schools are losing, that are predominantly white, are losing these athletes that are like, no, get out of here. Like, you are not helping me and you are not helping the Black community. I'm going to Howard. Then it's going to force these schools to change because they are losing money. And unfortunately, like green is like, unfortunately, the language that a lot of these places speak. Yeah. Not to mention endowments. Like that is a huge driver from my perspective, again, as someone who worked in college athletics, for why I think these amazing Black athletes, by the way, most of the top athletes in this country on basketball and football boards and things like that are Black. So let's just start there. Mm-hmm. But I think the reason that they should be going is like, now people are going to want to donate more money, and that's going to increase the endowment, which is going to increase the amount that they're able to then go and recruit more people because they have the resources to do so. So it's like this, it's going to create this like beautiful ecosystem for helping HBCUs that are severely underfunded to begin with.
I feel there's going to be a giant cultural shift, especially with college athletics, for the top level athletes really soon.
There has to be.
We saw, I think it was just yesterday, Florida announced that students in Florida schools are going to be able to make money off of endorsements and sponsorships soon. We've seen a lot of athletes started with, what was it, Northwestern, saying that, hey, you're not going to just profit off of my name. So not only are these are things going to start changing where athletes might be able to get paid, we have this other cultural shift going on where we have a lot of the Black athletes saying, hey, I want to represent my people and I want to represent what's important to me and go to these HBCUs. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see in I wouldn't say distant future, but I wouldn't say near future, like maybe like 10, 15 years, these HBCUs really skyrocketing in popularity because more people are going to them based off of the two things that are kind of happening today.
which gets exposure, right? Which inherently increases their popularity.
Yeah.
You know,
So
like how many people, I didn't know what BYU was before like Jim or Burnett, you know, like stuff like that, you know, like, so, you know, anything that helps them, I'm all for.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that all these big schools can only, or these smaller schools are only loving having these big athletes come to. I'm sure not many. I mean, did you know Murray State before John Morant
No.
2 years ago? No, exactly not. So so it's like having these things I think are really huge. And I mean, talking about what's been going on recently, we've had a really big change in Juneteenth, the holiday that has recently been really accepted much more recently. Could you kind of explain what Juneteenth is and what it kind of means to the Black community?
Yeah, sure. So Juneteenth is June 19th, for those that don't know. And I think that I'll start with Juneteenth is like, I think one of the most misconceived holidays, up there with like Columbus Day, right? Like I genuinely don't understand why we celebrate Columbus Day, but I think there's a very large misconception in what like freedom for Black people, or in this case it would have been African American.
Could you explain what happened on June 19th? Okay.
Yeah. So June 19th in 1865, there was a general that rode to Texas, and he basically read out to the people there that they were going to be free. And they were no longer slaves, they were free men and women. And so it basically is like the celebration of freedom for African Americans in this country. So it's kind of like Black July 4th, but significantly more impactful.
Yeah.
But the misconception there is that a lot of people say that, when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in 1863, that's what freed the slaves. And that is not true. And a lot of people sort of hang their hat on that. People do not understand why I absolutely do not stand Abraham Lincoln. And now that people are like learning more about it, I'm like, told you. And so the Emancipation Proclamation, which by the way was a complete political decision by Abraham Lincoln, not altruistic. Anyway, the Emancipation Proclamation basically just said like, we'll free them. That's all it said, right? But let's not forget that our political system is not the same as the political system that we had then. And so, and also we fought a war over this, right? An internal war, better known as the Civil War, or if you're from the South, the War of Northern Aggression. As a native New Yorker, I think that's hilarious.
It's
yeah, it's hysterical.
Still to this day, I don't get why people fly like y'all lost. People still fly the Confederate flag.
Like, oh, honey, that's the losing flag.
Yeah, it's like, imagine if like some of us were like, yeah, we're flying the British flag because we.
Exactly. You know what? Like, the British have some really great points on oppression. Like, what?
No, you wouldn't. Yeah. So
get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it basically made it so that they were free, right? Black African Americans were free. Unfortunately, it doesn't account for the fact that this isn't enforceable in every state, right? So, let's not forget also that we have states' rights versus federal rights. And so that's basically what we're fighting an entire war over, on top of, freedom for African Americans. Mm-hmm. Is in Texas, Abraham Lincoln did not have a stronghold. He couldn't enforce jack squat. And so then when this general, finally they have the numbers to then go in and enforce this rule. And there's like some mystery behind, I guess, like this is like, I'm triggering like some, 11th grade history here that I remember, but there's like some mystery behind why Black people in Texas didn't know that they were free. And like, whether it was like, I think the messenger got like killed, right? Cause like, you have to remember, like, this isn't going out on Facebook.
Yeah.
It's like, you're free, surprise. And so then finally this general went and had the numbers behind him to actually free every last person in Texas. And by the way, that memorandum basically said, now you have to get paid for this relationship. That's basically what it said. Like, you're free, you have to get paid for this relationship. But like, how does that doesn't change how your overseer, who
Yeah,
now
because many of them just stayed on many of the slaves stayed on the plantations, and now
well, there was a mass migration to the north actually, and there were a
like the
number
warmth
of
of
people
others.
that moved to like Texas. I believe the states were Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, or not Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas. I can't remember the third state that a lot of people fled to go find like family, like pockets of their family. And a lot of people did that, but a number of people, like, it's the same. I equate this to the same thing as why like some people can't leave during hurricanes. It's like, yeah, this is a really shitty situation, but I genuinely don't have the means to leave it. And that is exactly how that started. Like, your overseer doesn't see you differently now because you're free. He just pays you
a little bit to be able to do what
like
he legally, the legal minimum.
Yeah, literally, like, is like paying you some bullshit amount for you to do the exact same thing. And by the way, to think that he's not beating you is still absolutely freaking ridiculous, right? Like, your quality of life is exactly the same. The only difference is now that he's like tossing you a dime every now and then.
Yeah, it wasn't like, oh, the free slaves were freed and then, oh, everything's fine. Like we're equal. It's like, oh, now that that's all over, I can hear. Yeah, Lexi, I've been meaning to tell you that you're equal to me, but now I can. Like, no, it's not how it happened. Like,
I've been meaning to get around to that.
Yeah, it's not how it happened. And I think a series that does a really good job of showing this process all the way through was Roots. I'm sure. I mean, every Black person pretty much has seen it, but it's a really, really good film. If you haven't had the chance to watch Roots,
unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Did you see the new one or the older?
I've seen like the old one with like
older one. Yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, so I've seen the new one as well, and it's like they both do a great job of explaining. So the premise is there's this a man that's living in Africa named Kunta Kinte, and he's taken from his home. I can't remember what country he's living in, and they take them to. Yeah, and then they take them to the United States, and it shows his experience growing up as a slave, and then not only that, but also his family tree, which is then go through the other types of racism where he is a slave, and then like how his child is growing up, and then his grandchild is growing up through just segregation, blah blah blah, and it's really, really good and powerful, and can show. Yeah, right when they're like, I remember they say slavery, okay, slavery is over, and then everyone's like, what do? We have no money. Like, it's not like they can just pack their things. They don't have anything. Like, where are you gonna go?
They are the ones being owned. They have nothing that they own.
Yeah, so it's really, that's why I think it's really
it's like sharecropping, right? Which is
sharecropping,
different kind of slavery.
Oh yeah, the exact same thing.
Like, that leads to crime because people are going to steal when they need things for their families. Mm-hmm. And then that leads to prison, which leads to the prison industrial complex. And the next thing you know, you're in 2020.
Yep. And now people are wondering why
how we got here.
Why it's a similar thing. You're just taking the label off and writing something else. It's you just
wrote private prison on there. That's all we did. We took off slavery and wrote private prison.
Yeah, because I know that one thing that in a lot of our discussions has been popular is 13th, where it's talking about the 13th Amendment and the emancipation of slaves, or saying, and it doesn't actually say, if you read the law, it doesn't actually just say like slavery is outlawed. It's unless it's being used as a punishment, which is why the prison system can get away with doing essentially what is considered slavery, just put under different things, which is why you constantly see these private prisons being filled, because it's like, well, this is our only way that we can get away with it as of right now, most prominent way we can get away with it. So let's keep doing it. And so it's cycling the same system.
Further learning on that, if anyone is interested, is Angela Davis, who, by the way, is just like the most kick-ass person. I met her when I was in college.
You got to meet her? How?
Yeah, she's awesome. I met her in college.
That's awesome.
But if you don't know about Angela. First of all, you got to know about Auntie Angela because she know about her. But she does an amazing, amazing piece. I'm blanking on the name of it right now, about the prison industrial complex, and it is phenomenal. So look that up when you guys get a chance.
What was the movie that she was in? Was it The Help? I can't remember. It was a little while ago. I remember seeing a thing where it was about like a white lawyer that kind of helped out a group of black women that were being mistreated. I can't remember the exact.
That's The Help.
Yeah, it is The Help. Okay, so and she actually spoke up on just recently, saying that she was like, yeah, I wish that I had never starred in it because it showed as if like the white savior complex, which is a thing that's going on a lot more recently, where it's like, hey, these group of African Americans really could only be saved by this the white savior, like the knight in shining armor, essentially, is what a lot of people can kind of think of. And she's like, yeah, it just showed that, made it seem as if.
Help! I just looked it up.
I must be thinking of Viola Davis, the one that's in How to Get Away with Murder.
She is in.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So Viola Davis is like longtime actor. Angela Davis, longtime activist.
Yeah, I don't know why I messed it up. Davis, yeah.
But yes, what you're touching on is very true and super impactful, right? Is like that white savior complex, which trying to explain to people is, I'm like, let's start with white fragility and then we'll go to your white savior complex. But yes, right, where it's like you need the white man or the white woman or whatever to save you from whatever plight you have. Like you're unable to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that The Help probably does a pretty good job of
showing what that is. And
it's like it's a fine line, or in my mind it's somewhat thick, but a fine line in some people's mind between allyship and white saviorism.
Yeah, you can see it in a more modern view is the Get Out, where there's the idea of the people that are like, oh, I mean, obviously that changes in the film very quickly, but like in the beginning, like when they're like, I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could have, and you're like, then you understand later on in the film why that's a little sketchy.
Yeah,
but
watch that first of all. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So with all of these, we've seen a lot of different issues that are going on in the United States. What are some, like, I'm all for you want to know what you're fighting, what the problems are. Now, what are some solutions that you see? Let's start with on the short term. Like, what's something that us in the Black community could do, and then some people that are outside of the Black community can do to help in the immediate future with making this solution a little bit better.
Yeah. So in terms of the Black community, I'll say it's not the Black community's fault and problem that systemic racism exists in this country. So it's not their job to fix it. I would say with that in mind that it's great if they want to help in their companies, in their neighborhoods or whatever, but it is not the Black problem.
I would say while it may not be the problem, I've always been, my view is like you should facilitate in your own rescue. Like if you're drowning and you're not trying, and someone's throwing you a buoy, you should try to grab it. And so facilitate in your own rescue. So I recognize it's not the African American. Yeah, I'm saying like there's still things.
Racism might be the exception to that rule.
Well, there's still things that people can do. Like, I mean, like there's.
No, but I would say, right, like to the average, like African American person or Black person living in America, is like when someone asks you for help, like maybe like if a white person's like, hey, I don't understand this, as long as they're being respectful and you feel like you're okay today answering that, that's something, right? Like we can change these things on a micro level. And so, that's one thing that I would say. I would say also in like companies or corporations, like if they're asking for opinions or thoughts, like, and that you have something that you want to say, like say it. Like our voices have never been louder. Never, ever, ever. Use yours. And
that's what I mean. That like what you're saying is what I was kind of inferring. Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't think that it's like up to Black America to be like, okay, like let's band together, get a committee and solve this. It's like, no, I don't think that at all. I think that if, if someone's asking you and you're trying to be proactive, that's great. And you want to do that, like, definitely take that on. I just don't think, I hate the idea that, like, first of all, Black people were literally stolen into this country. And then it's like, okay, like, we recognize that we effed up for 400 years. Can you help us fix it now? And I'm like, sure, I'll help you fix it on this micro level, but understand that it is not my problem to fix. It is your problem to fix. And I'm happy to help you along the way when it's convenient for me. But I think it's like very short-sighted for us as people to think that, like, we somehow can fix this problem that we did not create. And I do think that, like, we need white Americans to recognize that it's not your empathy or your empathy that's going to fix this problem. It's like your action. But I also think that there's like a level of education that's necessary in the Black community as well, to recognize why some of these things are, to sort of help pick us up a little bit more, right? Because I think that for a lot of people, they don't understand why they are poverty stricken, or why they can't break the cycle of teen pregnancy or whatever. And I think that if more people knew that, it might help them. And that's not to say that education is going to solve teen pregnancy today. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah. That's
so I don't think it's like some magic wand. But I think that part of it is, like, recognizing that when people, specifically white people, ask that you're open to conversation. That's not to say that every conversation is for you. Every conversation doesn't serve you. It's okay. That's fine. But being more open to the idea that, like, my voice has never been louder. Let me use it now,
Mm-hmm.
That's like the one thing that I would say. Other than that, I think it's like a complete case by case basis, and you do what you can.
Yeah, I'm thinking that while especially on the short term and the immediate future, there's a lot. I think there's less that African Americans, Black people can do to really make
In the
short term. Where long term, I think there's more with voting and with joining these HBCUs and doing things like that. Those are some more long term. I don't know if you had
business.
Yeah. What were some of these? What do you think are some more long-term solutions we can see from people to make this issue that has finally been really unveiled completely, maybe a lot smaller, so it's not, while racism may always still be there, it probably always will, it'll be a much smaller issue, some years from now.
Yeah, it's hard because it's so ingrained in the fabric of our society. But I would say one is like supporting Black businesses, right? Like, the more we support them, the more Black entrepreneurs that there will be, the more Black CEOs there will be, all of those things. Mm-hmm. And so that for me is like a step one. Like, I had a Starbucks the other day and my dad lit me up. Right. So I went and I looked up Black owned coffee shops, right? Like, that was the easiest thing for me to do. I was like, all right, if my dad's going to light me up for Starbucks, rightfully so, like, the least I could do is like look and see what's Black owned. And it turns out that there's actually one, like, right near where you and I work on Halsey Street. There's a Black owned coffee shop that's like, and their coffee's $2. I was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. No brainer. I'm saving money and I'm supporting Black owned businesses. This is a no-brainer. So that's one. I think another thing is an education piece. Our schools need an overhaul.
Oh yeah, don't even get me started on that.
Plain and simple. Yeah. And I think that if we had more, as I like to say, Black and brown babies, my best friend from childhood is a teacher in the 7th Ward in New Orleans, and she has blonde hair and blue eyes, but she loves her students, and they're mostly Black and brown babies. And the resources that she works with are disgusting. Yeah. She's so, and she spends so much of her own money on these things, which is completely counter to the way that we grew up in the school that we went to. So that, for one, is just like actually having resources that are the same as those suburban kids that have great tax money go into their schools, as those Black and brown babies.
It's really poor. It's bad I can see that right away, because the school that I went to for high school is extremely well funded. Like, there's a lot of taxes. There's like, they're going through There's been a lot of unveiling of some racism that has been in the school it's a predominantly white school, but I guess just a renaissance eventually gets reset and people will hopefully be loving each other again. But it's a very well-funded school, great place to send a kid. And then just not even down the road, like if I didn't grow up on the street that I'm on now and I grew up on the street like 2 blocks down the road, it's a school system that is not very well funded, and it's predominantly Black, and it you can see that the chances that the people that just live 2 blocks down the road from me get compared to what I'm receiving is night and day. You'd never think it's the same school. And it's like, it's so disheartening to see. We live in the same area, but I'm getting treated so much better than someone that lives just 2 streets down from me. It's awful.
It's insane, and it's heartbreaking, but it's something that we can do something about. And I'm like, no, this isn't just this thing that's like, oh, how do you stop like redlining from like a bank where it's like, that's so hard, it's like, which we can stop also, but like.
Could you explain what redlining is?
Yeah. So redlining is basically this idea that banks and other systems like that have used to they would literally draw like red lines on maps in predominantly Black neighborhoods that would like tank the property values of these homes. And so it made it like a less desirable neighborhood. So when people were going to get like loans or things like that, it just like made it like legal to make it so that Black people weren't getting loans at banks for homes. And so then that leads into this like more of this like systemic racist system where Black people aren't getting loans, so they don't have money for homes. They're forced into projects, and it basically created like what a ghetto was. Yeah. And it legalized it. And by the way, banks in Atlanta were still getting caught doing this in like 5 years ago. Yeah, so, it's not like a thing of the past, right? Like my dad was one of the only, like our family, like my aunt and uncle also, like our family was like one of 2. I think there was 2 Black families in the suburb that I grew up in. And my dad's like 50. Like he's not old. Like it's like these things are not like, I don't know what like lies your parents were telling you, but like this shit is like very real today. So, that's like something that I think we can solve, right? Is like, I think urban suburban programs, for example, is like a really good start, but it's like, why should select kids get that? It's like, by having an urban suburban program, we recognize that like suburban schools are better. So why not just like fund the urban ones? Like, there you go. Like, you know what I mean? Like just make those better. There you go. Like I solved it for you in 26 seconds. Like, there you go. And I'm sure there's like all of these things, but it's like, no, the shit that you're going to tell me is like backlash is all bureaucratic. And I genuinely don't care. Like fund those schools. There you go. That will help us 15 years from now because there's some engineer sitting in that classroom that otherwise didn't have access because he was concerned about where his next meal was coming from, not what the shit you were trying to teach him was.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's a no-brainer.
I think it's awful, especially with what's going on today with the virus. I think it makes it even worse. Where a lot of these schools, a lot of these students, they relied on the school systems for their lunches, and all these programs, and so you cut out
snacks.
Yep. So you cut out the last 2 months that these students were going to have, even three or 4 months, depending on when it ends. Like now they can't focus on their education because they may not have the laptops for Zoom that all these other students may have,
or the quiet space.
So now an already disenfranchised group of students is going to be going through even more now that they have these issues. So I'm hoping that sometime in the future, these schools are receiving the funds that they need, because I mean, if you're not going to, I mean, there's proof. If you can have such great schools, all schools could be like that. Like you have an opportunity. If it can happen with one, it can happen with many. So,
but I think a school system, and sort of what you're talking about here, is like the best way to look at like a microcosm of systemic racism at work, right? So you have little Timmy is a Black student at an inner city school, and the pandemic hits. He doesn't have a computer. He has his mom's phone to do his Zoom calls. But mom works at Chipotle, right? So she goes in because she's an essential worker, but now mom has to worry about staying home and watching after her children, or she has to go work at Chipotle and worry about contracting the virus, but she also has to feed children that are at home, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's step one, right? Like, we're already disenfranchised because mom has to make a choice between being a mom home with her kids or go work so that she can help them and feed them, right? So now he doesn't have his phone because they don't have a computer. They just have mom's phone, which has internet access.
And the public libraries are closed if they even have one.
And the public libraries are closed. So. On top of that, who's going to take them to the public library? Mom doesn't have a car because mom doesn't have the money, because mom, it's literally just systemic racism at play. Like, it's just like, it's such a distinct, like, there's a distinct privilege in the fact that people, like, my mom never had to choose between being a mom and going to work. When my mom had me, she was like, I think I'll be a mom. And she just like fucked off of the workforce. Like, she didn't care. She didn't have to, but every parent isn't like that. And then on top of that, like, when your mom, like, or this person's mom, Timmy's mom, doesn't have the education to help him with that math homework, like, how is he then, like, you're creating this further gap, all because all of, like, generational that, like, led to Timmy and this, like, phone in a pandemic, and it just, like, shed a spotlight on it for so many people. First of all, thank God. But like, there have been Timmys for generations leading back to slavery in this country.
Yeah, so it's finally, I mean, while the pandemic and the situation with especially with George Floyd and all the other African Americans that have been killed over the years, I think it's obviously terrible and it's obviously awful. I think the fact that the pandemic and the George Floyd incident happened at the same time is
and
Breonna Taylor, especially. I think that it's crucial that it happened at this time because everyone's eyes are on it, and so you have no excuse now. Like, you can't say I didn't see it because I was too busy.
Don't get it. For people that are like, I don't understand. I'm like, you must not have Google.
Yeah, you just didn't see it. And how did you not see it, or how did you not know?
Do you go outside? I don't get it.
So I think that I'm hoping that we can see change now, because this one feels different. Like, with all of the other, like, since December, there have been 82, probably more now since a week has passed, but there is 82 Black people that had been killed, unarmed Black people that have been killed since December. And so how many of those do we remember the names of? Not many, if any at all. But this one, where we've actually had movements for, and I'm hoping that this change that people are calling for happens, because it's been too long and it's something that we need.
Yeah, I want my kids to, like, look back and be like, I don't understand.
Yeah. I don't want to have to tell my children about these types of situations. Like, I don't want
to have the talk with my child when he's 16. I don't. Like, I want a white mother to have a conversation with her son or her daughter or her, them, they, whatever, right? Like, I want a mother to have a child with her white child, or talk with her white child about what it means to be white in America. So I don't have to keep, like, Black people don't have to keep doing that. Like, I'm tired. I did it for 400 years. Our people did it for 400 years. You can do it now. It's fine. Go do it. Like, we're done.
Yeah. I feel that the horizon of change is just around the corner. I'm hoping that it happens. I think we got to
keep the conversation going, though.
Conversation needs to keep going. This isn't something that we have to stop. That has to stop now. We need to keep it going on, so that in the future, all of our generations will be able to see it. And I mean, there's a lot of support on both sides, like, not just within the Black, because obviously Black community would be supportive, but I've seen a lot of my coworkers and a lot of my friends that are not Black supporting. And I'm like, great. Now let's keep the same energy in 6 months, like when it's going to happen. And then a year from now, and then 2 years from now, like, that's the hardest part. And so if they can do it, I think that we really got a chance to have something change here.
Yeah, I think there's an awakening. I don't think that the white community can bury their head anymore. I think that they're like, oh shit, it's like that, and we're like, yes, it's like
yeah.
So I don't think they will, and if they do, I don't think that the Black community will let them anymore. I just don't. I know I'm not. Like, I'm not going to go to work the same person. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not letting little slick shit slide anymore. I'm not.
Yeah, be like, you just said that we're gonna have a discussion about this.
Bitch about it. You know, you can just say like, oh, I didn't love that, you know, or whatever. Explain it. But the problem is, it's like when you don't know better, you can't do anything, right? But when you know better, do better.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
But you guys are reading, so like you know better. So now you just made a choice. So let's make the right choices now.
Exactly. Well, Lexi, it's been awesome chatting with you. Where can people find you if they're looking to? I know you've posted a few things on social media about this. Where can people find you?
Big on Instagram on this, alongside content of me doing bougie things throughout my life. Listen, every Black person's not the same. We can all be different, okay? Mm-hmm. But you can find me at No Lex Zone. It's a little bit of a nod to No Flex Zone. Mm-hmm. There's some underscores in there, but you'll find me. It's a cute picture of me in a Devil's sweatshirt. You'll find me.
That was a great photo shoot.
Yeah.
Those times. So that was fun.
Awesome. Great. It's a picture from that. But yeah, you'll find me. I'm sure that Colin will put this out there and he'll tag me. Please feel free to follow along. And if you want to DM me there and you want to chat more, you have questions about what I've said, or you hate everything I've said, just know that I will laugh. But feel free to follow along. Always happy to teach and learn along the way as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Lexi. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the show. It's been fantastic. Make sure you tune in next Thursday to get the next rendition of Innovators Anonymous. It's going to be a great one. Make sure that you're following us on Instagram at innovators.anonymous, and make sure you give this podcast a rate, follow, and subscribe. Have a good one, and bye.